Tana Williams felt a sharp burn as the flight attendant's hand left a painful burn mark on her face. The entire first-class cabin fell silent. Passengers gasped in shock. Just moments ago, she had asked for a pillow to ease her aching back. Carrying twins in her 7th month. Then the violence came. Flight attendant Camilla Monroe stood beside her, her blue eyes flashing with undisguised contempt. "You people never know your place," she hissed. Tiana's trembling fingers found her phone. One call could change everything. The plane hadn't even left the gate yet. Before we dive into this shocking story about discrimination at 30,000 feet, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If you believe in standing up against injustice wherever it happens, please hit like and subscribe for more stories about courage in the face of bias. What would you do if you witnessed this on your flight? Dr. Tiana Williams had planned this trip for months. As one of the few Black neurosurgeons in the U.S., her groundbreaking research on nervous system adaptability in pregnancy had changed how doctors approach prenatal care. The medical conference in Boston marked 3 years of hard work balancing surgery and research while carrying twins, first class. Her husband Marcus insisted, booking the ticket himself. "You deserve comfort, especially carrying our little ones." His warm smile and gentle hand on her belly convinced her to accept the luxury she usually avoided. Tiana settled into her spacious seat, relieved to have extra room for her 7-month pregnant body. She had carefully packed her presentation materials in her carry-on, rehearsing key points in her mind as other passengers boarded. The moment Victoria Keller appeared at the cabin door, everything changed. The blonde flight attendant's smile faded as they locked eyes, her professional demeanor instantly cooling. During the pre-flight preparations, Victoria had warmly served white passengers, offering champagne, hanging coats, providing headphones. But when she reached Tiana, her gestures slowed, and her gaze never met Tiana's. "Excuse me," Tiana politely said as Victoria passed her seat for the 3rd time without responding to her request for water. "May I please have some water to take my medication?" Victoria's lips pressed tight. "I'll get to you when I can." 20 minutes later, Tiana was still waiting while Victoria chatted amiably with an older white couple across the aisle. When she finally brought the water, Victoria's hand slipped, spilling the cold liquid over the carefully prepared presentation papers. "Tiana, excuse me," Tiana politely said as Victoria passed by her seat for the 3rd time without acknowledging her request for water. "Could I please have some water to take my medicine?" Victoria's lips pressed tightly together. "I'll get to you when I can." 20 minutes later, Tiana was still waiting while Victoria chatted cheerfully with an elderly white couple sitting across the aisle. When she finally brought the water, Victoria's hand slipped, causing the icy liquid to spill all over the meticulously prepared presentation papers Tiana had set up. "I'm so sorry," Victoria said, her tone showing no real remorse as Tiana frantically wiped her soaked documents. "You should keep those in a safer place." As the preparation for takeoff was underway, Tiana's lower back began to ache intensely. This was a common discomfort for those carrying twins. As the doctor had warned, this medical conference was too important to miss. But sitting for hours without support was going to be painful. "Excuse me," she gently called as Victoria walked by. "Could I please have a pillow for my back? I'm 7 months pregnant with twins. And everyone has special needs." Victoria snapped loudly, cutting her off. "People always want special treatment." The room fell silent. A white businessman 3 rows ahead had already been given 2 pillows without asking. The white businessman 3 rows ahead had gotten 2 pillows without a word. "I only asked for a standard seat," Tiana calmly explained. Her medical training was kicking in. "My health condition." The slap came out of nowhere. Victoria's hand hit Tiana's cheek so hard her head tilted to the side. The sound echoed through the cabin, stunning everyone. "You people never know your place," Victoria hissed loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. Smartphones appeared as passengers started recording. Some shouted in protest while others oddly defended Victoria, saying they didn't know the whole story yet. Tiana's hand trembled as she pulled out her phone. With incredible calm, she called her law school friend Rebecca Carter, now a senior legal advisor at the Department of Transportation. "Becky, It's Tiana. I was just assaulted by a flight attendant on United Airlines Flight 1382 at O'Hare. Yes, slapped in the face. I'm 7 months pregnant. The plane's still at the gate. Within minutes, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been instructed to remain at the gate while an onboard incident is investigated. Please stay seated. Victoria's face went pale as she realized what was happening. This difficult passenger had connections. But instead of backing down, her eyes hardened with determination. She wouldn't let someone like Tiana humiliate her. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay, the captain announced as tension filled the first-class cabin. We are handling a situation and appreciate your patience. Victoria huddled with two other flight attendants, eagerly signaling toward Tiana, who was still flushed from the slap. Whispered rumors spread throughout the cabin, passengers taking sides before knowing the truth. She attacked me, Victoria loudly claimed as the lead flight attendant questioned her. She grabbed my wrist when I told her we were out of pillows. I reacted instinctively to protect myself. Tiana's mouth dropped open at the blatant lie. Completely untrue. Many passengers had recorded what happened. Some white passengers near the front nodded in agreement with Victoria. The pregnant woman was acting aggressively. A woman wearing sunglasses declared, I saw it. How aggressive was she? Challenged a young black man sitting across, his phone still recording. When Tiana requested a pillow while pregnant with twins, two airline representatives boarded with sad faces. They pulled Victoria aside, but they still looked at Tiana like she was the problem. As they approached, their solution became clear. Dr. Williams, perhaps it's best if you take another flight. The senior representative suggested smoothly, we can rebook you for tomorrow. I'm presenting at the National Medical Conference tomorrow. Tiana replied calmly, and I'm not leaving this plane after being assaulted. I haven't broken any rules. This situation is making other passengers uncomfortable. The rep insisted, the racial attack is also making me uncomfortable. Tiana countered. The police arrived next, their faces showing annoyance at being called for what they considered a minor issue. They barely glanced at the mark on Tiana's face. Ma'am, let's not make this a bigger deal than it is, one officer said dismissively. Flying is stressful for everyone. Officer, I have multiple witnesses and video evidence of the assault, Tiana insisted, maintaining professionalism despite growing frustration. A distinguished silver-haired man in a perfect suit strode down the aisle. Harold Whitman, customer service director. His presence should have signaled the situation was being taken seriously. Instead, he went straight to Victoria, patting her shoulder comfortingly. I understand a passenger became unruly, he said loud enough for all to hear. Sir, I'm Dr. Tiana Williams, she interrupted, standing as tall as her pregnant body would allow. The flight attendant slapped me because I asked for a pillow. I wasn't loud or breaking any rules. I was assaulted on your plane. And I know my rights under federal transportation law. Harold's expression hardened as he realized she knew her legal protections. He opened his mouth to respond when a woman in a Department of Transportation uniform appeared at the door. I'm Stephanie Kamar from DOT's Passenger Rights Office, she announced, holding up her credentials. We received a serious complaint about an assault on this flight. Harold's attitude shifted immediately. We're conducting a full investigation, he said gently to her. It's just a misunderstanding. Stephanie looked Tiana in the eyes. Misunderstandings don't leave marks on passengers' faces. This incident needs to be addressed immediately. After reviewing witness statements and video, Stephanie spoke privately with Harold, the best posture her pregnant body allowed. The flight attendant slapped me in the face for asking for a pillow. I didn't raise my voice or break any rules. I was assaulted on your plane, and I know my rights under federal aviation law. Harold's expression hardened as she learned about the legal protections. He opened his mouth to respond when a woman in a Department of Transportation uniform appeared at the door. I'm Stephanie Kamar, from the DOT Passenger Rights Office, she announced, holding up her badge. We have received a serious complaint about an assault on this flight. Harold's attitude changed. Immediately, we're conducting a thorough investigation. He gently reassured her. It was just a misunderstanding. Stephanie replied as she looked into Tiana's eyes. Misunderstandings don't leave marks on passengers' faces. This incident needs to be addressed immediately. After reviewing witness statements and video, Stephanie spoke privately with Harold. A few minutes later, Victoria was escorted off the plane, shooting Tiana a spiteful glance. "This isn't over," she muttered as she passed by. Harold addressed everyone in the cabin with genuine concern. "We apologize for this delay. Flight attendant Keller will be replaced, and a full investigation will be conducted regarding this unfortunate incident." The flight finally departed 2 hours late. Although Tiana still sat in her seat, the atmosphere had shifted. The remaining passengers in the cabin treated her poorly. Other passengers either stared or deliberately avoided eye contact, and whispers erupted every time she went to the restroom. The flight, that should have been relaxing, turned into a test of endurance. Do you believe Tiana was right to stand her ground? Or should she have switched flights to avoid the stress? Comment 1 if you think she made the right choice staying on the plane, or comment 2 if you think she should have accepted changing flights. Please like and subscribe if you believe everyone deserves respectful treatment, regardless of their race. What happens when Tiana finally arrives? In Boston, will the incident fade away, or is it just the beginning of a bigger storm that will change her life forever? Tiana's phone kept buzzing with notifications as the plane landed in Boston. The videos spread rapidly. Dr. Tiana V's video was trending nationwide. She scrolled through the headlines while driving. "Pregnant doctor slapped by flight attendant on DFly plane. Shocking video. Race in the sky." The confrontation went viral. The flight attendant claimed she was defending herself against an aggressive passenger. Conservative news channels portrayed Victoria as the victim. The flight attendant defended herself against the passenger's behavior. Social media campaigns formed within hours. Justice for Tiana was fighting Victoria across multiple platforms. As Senator Tiana stepped off the jet bridge, she was stunned. The terminal was filled with people holding signs. Some were supporting her. "Black Lives Matter" echoed in the air. Others condemned her. "Stop playing the race card." Airport security cleared a path through the crowd. Chaos. Dr. Williams, what does it feel like to have a woman's career ruined over a misunderstanding? A reporter shouted, holding a microphone toward her. "Dr. Williams, have you filed assault charges?" Another called out. Her phone rang. "Marcus, Jasmine, are you okay?" "It's everywhere. Your mom's been getting calls from reporters at her house." "I'm fine," she reassured him, though her heart was pounding. "Just get to the hotel and prepare for tomorrow's presentation." The hotel lobby offered no refuge. Conference attendees stared as she checked in, whispers following her all the way to the elevator. The conference coordinator, Dr. Lawrence Patel, was waiting. In her room, "Tiana," he began awkwardly. "You've put us in a tough spot." "I've put you in a tough spot," she repeated in disbelief. It shifted uncomfortably. "Some sponsors have expressed concern that your presentation will distract from the scientific content." Tiana responded firmly. "My research has real-world value. The incident on the plane has nothing to do with my work on brain adaptability during pregnant." He suggested that maybe we could reschedule your presentation for next year's conference. "Let's give things some time to settle." Tiana pushed back, placing her hand protectively on her belly. "My research is currently helping pregnant women. I won't allow discrimination to happen twice in 24 hours. Dr. Patel sighed. "Your presentation is still scheduled for 9 a.m. But please understand, this will make things difficult for the conference." Alone in the room, Tiana rehearsed her presentation while checking updates. United Airlines released a rather indifferent statement. "We're investigating an incident involving a passenger and crew member. United is committed to treating all passengers with respect." Victoria appeared on Nation Talk News, tears streaming as she described feeling threatened by Tiana. She insisted she never discriminated against anyone. "I was scared when she got agitated." The host nodded sympathetically. "Are you worried about being labeled racist in today's cancel culture?" The comments below the interview were flooded with support for Victoria. Many were vulgar comments Tiana couldn't even read through. When she opened her presentation folder, she found a note. Go home. Doctor, security was called, reports were filed, but the damage was done. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, Tiana walked into the presentation hall to mixed reactions. Some nodded in support, others were cold. The room, which should have been full for such important research, had many noticeably empty seats. Dr. Patel's introduction was brief. Taking a deep breath, Tiana stepped up to the podium. Good morning. I'm Dr. Tiana Williams, presenting on optimizing nervous system adaptation in high-risk pregnancies. Before starting, yes, I'm the doctor from yesterday's viral video. Yes, I was attacked for asking for support during pregnancy, but for the next 40 minutes, I ask you to focus on the science that can help thousands of women and their babies. Over the next 40 minutes, she delivered her research flawlessly. Every slide, every data point, every conclusion presented with absolute professional precision. When she finished, the applause started hesitant but grew louder as medical experts recognized the value of her work despite the controversy. Backstage, her phone showed a new email from United Airlines. We apologize for your experience. After careful review, we have determined this was an isolated incident that does not reflect our values. We offer a $5,000 compensation and ask for your consideration on this matter. Meanwhile, Victoria appeared on another news program. I've served passengers from all backgrounds for 15 years without incident. This passenger has ruined my reputation with a misleading video. Back at her hotel room, Tiana found a note slipped under the door. We know where you sleep, race agitator. The hotel moved her to a safer floor, but she still couldn't sleep. Because the twins kept kicking in her belly, her phone rang with a message from an unknown number. Dr. Williams, I've worked with Camilla Monroe. What happened to you is not an isolated case. Call me. Others were too afraid to speak out. 3 days after returning home from Boston, Tiana sat in the OB/GYN office for a stress checkup. Her blood pressure had dangerously spiked since the incident. You need to reduce stress immediately. Dr. Chen warned, reviewing her stats, these numbers aren't consistent with a healthy pregnancy. I recommend cutting back hours and bed rest if things don't improve within a week. Tiana nodded. Though her mind was a whirlwind of complicated thoughts, the medical conference was just the beginning. She returned to find the hospital manager suggesting she take early maternity leave until things settled down. Colleagues were cautious around her. The career she'd worked so hard to build was shattered just because she asked for a pillow. Her phone rang. Rebecca from the Department of Transportation. Tiana, I'm looking into how United Airlines handled your complaint. Rebecca explained. Something strange is going on. The internal investigation is being derailed at every turn. Standard protocols aren't being followed. What does that mean? Tiana asked. Rebecca replied. It means someone influential is interfering. I didn't understand why until I checked personnel records. Victoria Keller is the granddaughter of Richard Sterling. Who's Richard Sterling? Only the CEO of United Airlines. Rebecca said seriously. Victoria's mother is his sister. The pieces fit perfectly. Why was the airline's response so quiet? Why was Victoria so defiant? Why did the investigation go nowhere? When Tiana got home, a package was waiting. The official settlement document offered $50,000 with a comprehensive confidentiality agreement. The terms were clear. She would never discuss this publicly, delete all social media posts, and state the matter was resolved to everyone's satisfaction. Marcus reviewed the papers with growing anger. They're trying to buy your silence, and they think your pregnancy makes you vulnerable. Carlos, a friend and civil rights lawyer who stopped by to offer help, added, they're hoping you'll choose peace before the babies arrive. Tiana's phone kept ringing, reporters seeking comments, strangers supporting or criticizing, and more of her medical colleagues. Phone rang continuously for Tiana. Reporters sought comments. Strangers either supported or criticized her, and more of her medical colleagues looked for reasons to distance themselves from her. Her department head awkwardly explained, I can't let you assist with Peterson's surgery. They asked you not to get involved. They don't want any arguments affecting their child's care. The isolation at work is even worse than the online attacks that have made the doctors who once sought her expertise now avoid eye contact in the hospital hallways. Invitations to conferences suddenly vanish. The message is very clear. The fight against racism has become a burden for her. The stress is evident on her face. At night, Tiana experiences Braxton Hicks contractions more and more frequently. Her ankles swelled badly. Sleep became a distant memory. Then, an unexpected breakthrough happened. An anonymous messenger. Tara Johnston, a flight attendant who had worked with Victoria for 5 years, finally agreed to meet at a quiet cafe in the suburbs. Victoria had a nickname among the minority crew members, Tara explained nervously. Glancing back, the classifier would sort passengers by race, then decide the level of service they would receive based on that. Has anyone reported this? Tiana asked. Tara nodded repeatedly. There were at least 7 official complaints from Black, or Latino, and Middle Eastern passengers over the past 3 years. All were mysteriously resolved without any disciplinary action. How could that happen? Now I know her. Sis. But there's more. Tara continued. United has an internal rating system that classifies passenger complaints based on their potential impact on public relations. They evaluate the complainant based on social media, occupation, and connections, basically. How much trouble they could cause the airline. That's clearly discrimination. Tiana realized they tended to dismiss complaints from people with less social power. Exactly. And your case triggered the highest alert because you're a doctor with ties to the Department of Transportation. Otherwise, this would have been buried like all the others. Tara provided documents, complaint records, email chains, and the scoring matrix used to assess the threat level of complaints. The evidence painted a damning picture of systemic discrimination. That evening, as Tiana and Marcus reviewed the documents, the phone rang. It was Richard Sterling. Speaking softly but with genuine concern, Dr. Williams, I wanted to personally reach out about this unfortunate incident. We value you as both a passenger and a medical professional. It's certainly an interesting time. Mr. Sterling, Tiana replied coolly, I've just reviewed some troubling documents regarding the airline's complaint handling procedures. A pause. I don't understand what you're implying, but I suggest we resolve this privately. The offer was quite generous. This isn't about money. Mr. Sterling, it's about accountability. His tone hardened. About the airline's complaint handling process. A pause. I don't understand what you're implying, but I suggest we address this issue privately. The offer to resolve this is quite generous. The issue isn't money, Mr. Sterling. The issue is accountability. His tone becomes firm. Dr. Williams. These issues can become unnecessarily complex. Your medical practice, your pregnancy. Why add more stress to your life? Sometimes the best way is to move forward. An underlying threat hangs in the air. Tiana cautiously replies, I need to consider what's best for my family. A wise decision. Sterling. In response, relief is evident. Please have your lawyer contact our legal department tomorrow. Tiana hangs up and turns to Marcus. He thinks I'm backing down. Marcus squeezes her hand. Do you see? Tiana places his hand on her belly, where one of their twins is kicking hard. Our children will be born. In a world that judges us by skin color, what lesson would I be teaching them if I took money to stay silent about discrimination that night? Tiana officially rejected the settlement offer and filed a discrimination complaint with the Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration, along with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The next morning, her hospital received an anonymous call asking for her medical information. By that afternoon, 3 of her scheduled surgeries were canceled at patients' requests. The battle was just beginning. The certification letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. United Airlines' official response to Tiana's expanded complaint, a document drafted by a reputable law firm. Hawthorne and Reed systematically dismissed every allegation. Victoria was described as a valued employee. With a flawless 15-year work record, the incident was called a misunderstanding between parties, worsened by the heightened emotional state of the complainant due to pregnancy. Furious, Tiana handed the letter to Carlos, who agreed to represent her. They're using my pregnancy to discredit me. Carlos skimmed the document, his face darkening. This is just the beginning. Hawthorne and Reed didn't address the client's simple complaints. United's nuclear option for this high-stakes lawsuit was deployed with undeniable effectiveness. Their legal team filed requests for Tiana's complete medical records, claiming her mental and emotional state was the case's focus. They demanded her entire work history, professional evaluations, and even her medical school records. A deep dive designed to find any past flaw. They were searching for anything to discredit her. Carlos explained during a strategy meeting in Tiana's living room. Low grades, disagreements with colleagues, patient complaints, anything they can use to paint you as difficult or unstable. Tiana insisted they'd find nothing. I've worked twice as hard my whole career precisely because I knew I'd be under extra scrutiny. Marcus warned this might not be overblown. His marketing director experience gave insight into the company's tactics. They just need something that can sway public opinion. The airline hired Blackwater Crisis Management, a firm specializing in protecting corporate reputations. Within days, comments popped up on social media questioning Tiana's motives. Why is Dr. Williams targeting this airline? What does she really want? Convenient to use her pregnancy to gain sympathy. Reporters started receiving anonymous tips about Tiana's troubled past being exposed. One reporter called for comment on an incident during her internship when she was accused of misdiagnosing a patient due to negligence. The truth was, she questioned the attending doctor's diagnosis, proved it wrong, and saved the patient's life. The patient's life was twisted into a story of incompetence. The legal discovery process grew harsher. United's lawyers scheduled an 8-hour deposition for Tiana, despite her pregnancy, and refused to shorten it. When Carlos objected for medical reasons, they implied she was exploiting her condition to manipulate the case. At home, personal stress increased. Marcus grew more silent, working late and taking private calls. When Tiana pressed him, he finally admitted the truth. JKL Pharmaceuticals will cancel my marketing contract, he explained hoarsely. They claim it's budget restructuring, but my director told me privately that United's CEO called their board chairman. United's pharmaceutical shipping contract is worth millions to JKL. They targeted my job because of you, Tiana whispered in horror. Marcus tried to reassure her. We have savings. This case matters. We'll manage. 2 days later, Marcus came home pale. The restructuring happened. Today, 20% of the marketing department, including me, they called it downsizing, but the only employees affected were those working on accounts unrelated to United or its subsidiaries. That night, as Tiana calculated finances, the mortgage, healthcare costs, and upcoming expenses for the twins, her phone rang. Her mother's neighbor called from Atlanta. Tiana, honey, your mom collapsed in her neighbor's yard. The ambulance just took her to Atlanta Memorial Hospital. They said it might be a heart attack. The overnight flight to Atlanta echoed the harsh reality of where everything began. Every flight attendant's glance made Tiana wonder if they recognized her. Her mother, a retired principal who raised Tiana alone after her father died, had always been her rock. Now she lay in the cardiac intensive care unit, hooked up to tubes and monitors. Too much stress. Her mother whispered as she woke. Those awful people called all day and night, saying terrible things about my baby girl. I told them, we've never backed down from bullies, not since elementary school. Tiana realized her mother had shielded her from hateful calls aimed at her childhood home. The campaign against her had expanded to harassing a 68-year-old woman who was already in fragile health. That night in the hospital chapel, Tiana faced the darkest moment of her life. Her career was under attack, her husband unemployed, her mother hospitalized, and her unborn child is at risk of high blood pressure. All because she stood up against discrimination. Maybe accepting the agreement would protect everyone she loves. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Don't you dare give up." That's exactly what they wanted. Her mother raised a fighter. Our children need to know their mom never backs down from the truth. With tears, Tiana made her decision. The next morning, she called Carlos from the hospital hallway. "We're not just fighting for me anymore," she told him. "File an expanded lawsuit, include emotional distress, threats from the company, and retaliation. We're going after the whole system, protecting people like Victoria and punishing victims who dare to speak out." Have you ever stood up for what's right only to face unintended consequences? Comment 1 if you think Tiana should keep fighting no matter the cost. Or comment 2 if you believe protecting her family should come first. Like and subscribe if you want to see more stories about the fight against systemic injustice. Did Tiana make the right choice? Or did she risk too much? And what will happen when the airline realizes just how determined she really is? Can a pregnant doctor really take on a giant corporation with seemingly unlimited resources trying to crush her? The Atlanta hospital cafeteria wasn't Tiana's first choice for a secret meeting, but with her mother still recovering upstairs, she didn't have much flexibility. The woman sitting across from her glanced nervously over her shoulder before speaking. "I'm Tara Johnston. We've messaged before," she said quietly, removing her sunglasses to reveal tired eyes. "I'm risking everything to talk to you." "I really appreciate you coming," Tiana replied sincerely. "You mentioned you worked with Victoria." Tara nodded, nervously, tearing a napkin with her fingers. "We were flight attendants together for 4 years. What happened to you wasn't just a one-time thing. Over the next hour?" Tara shared details that sent chills down Tiana's spine. Victoria regularly categorized passengers by race and appearance, offering vastly different levels of service accordingly. She used coded language with sympathetic crew members. "Today we've got a Part 8 and 5C, or an affirmative action in first class." Most flight attendants were professional and fair, Tara emphasized, but Victoria created a toxic environment. Complainers were labeled as overly sensitive, or their schedules were rearranged to include undesirable routes. "I really appreciate you coming," Tiana replies sincerely. "You mentioned that you worked with Victoria." Tara nods, her fingers nervously tearing at a napkin. "We were flight attendants together for 4 years. What happened to her? It's not an isolated incident." Over the next hour, Tara details a behavior that sends chills down Tiana's spine. Victoria frequently categorized passengers by race and appearance, providing significantly different levels of service accordingly. She used coded language with sympathetic crew members. "Today we have an 8 and a 5C, or affirmative action in first class. Most flight attendants are professional and fair," Tara emphasizes, but Victoria created a toxic atmosphere. Those who complained were labeled as too sensitive or found their schedules rearranged to include undesirable routes. "Why risk your job to tell me this?" Tiana asks. Tara's eyes become more resolute. "My sister is married to a black man. Their son, my nephew, is only 10 years old. Last month, they flew to Disney World on Victoria's flight. She made my nephew wait an hour to buy a soda while serving everyone around him. When my sister complained, Victoria said, 'There must be a misunderstanding.' That's when she knew she couldn't stay silent anymore." Tara provided Tiana with invaluable documents. Screenshots of the crew schedule show how those who complained couldn't stay silent anymore. Tara provided Tiana with incredibly valuable documents. Screenshots of the crew schedule showed how complainants were punished. Copies of unresolved passenger complaints. Even internal emails discussing how to handle diversity issues without creating legal liability. Most alarming was a spreadsheet Tara accessed through the company's internal system, a document tracking customer complaints categorized by passenger demographics and priority level. Complaints from minority passengers were always classified as low priority regardless of severity. "Take these," Tara insisted, sliding a flash drive across the table. "I copied everything. This pattern has been going on for years." The evidence turned Tiana's case from an isolated incident into a systemic problem, exactly what United feared most. Carlos immediately filed an amended complaint with federal agencies, including the new evidence. Within days, 3 other former employees contacted Tiana's legal team with similar issues. The Slow-moving airline investigations suddenly gained momentum. Victoria was suspended, pending review. It was the first acknowledgement that her behavior deserved serious scrutiny. Richard Sterling issued a carefully worded statement reaffirming United's ongoing commitment to creating an inclusive environment for all passengers. For the first time since the slap, Tiana felt vindicated. Her mother's condition had stabilized enough to be transferred to a cardiac rehab facility. Marcus had received 2 promising job interviews. The latest ultrasounds showed the twins were growing healthily. Despite the stress, maybe things were turning around. Then Tara called, voice trembling. "They know." She gasped. "Someone saw us meeting in Atlanta. I was fired for violating the company's confidentiality policy. We're adding wrongful termination to the lawsuit," Tiana reassured her. "They can't fire you for reporting discrimination. It gets worse." Tara continued. "They claim I accessed confidential files without authorization. They're talking about criminal charges for corporate espionage. My apartment was broken into last night. My laptop and backup drive are gone. Nothing else was taken. The message is clear. Anyone who helps Tiana will face destruction." That night, another former employee who had agreed to testify backed out, citing personal reasons. A second later, they stopped returning calls altogether. "They're taking us down one by one." Carlos observed seriously. "Classic intimidation tactics." Tiana made a decision Marcus initially opposed. Tara needed protection. She would stay with them until this was resolved. "We've already become targets," Marcus argued. "Bringing her here puts everyone in more danger. We can't fight systemic discrimination by abandoning each other." Tiana countered, "That's exactly how they win." The next day, Tara moved into the guest room, constantly jumping at shadows and checking the locks. Her fear became well-founded when security cameras at Tiana's home caught someone taking pictures of their house at 3 a.m. The danger escalated when CNN aired an investigative segment on discrimination in the airline industry. Highlighting Tiana's case, the producer had independently verified some of Tara's claims. Other passengers shared similar experiences. Not just with Victoria, but across United's entire service network. Public opinion began to shift as a pattern emerged. United's stock price dropped 3%. After the broadcast, investors aggressively demanded answers at the quarterly earnings call. For the first time, Richard Sterling became defensive. When asked about discrimination allegations, the company's response became even more aggressive. United's PR team issued a statement questioning the timing and motives behind this coordinated media campaign. They highlighted Victoria's many years of exemplary service and suggested she was being scapegoated by special interest groups. Then came the counterattack, a civil lawsuit filed against Tiana and Carlos, accusing them of defamation, tortious interference with business relations, and conspiracy. $20 million in damages was sought. "They're trying to bankrupt us into silence," Carlos explained while reviewing the complaint. "Even if we win, lawyer fees would run into hundreds of thousands." "Can they do that?" Marcus asked. "This was a strategic lawsuit against public participation." Carlos explained it was a slap suit designed to intimidate and drain resources. "They didn't expect to win. They wanted to wear us down." That night, as Tiana tried to sleep, one of the twins kicked hard, as if protesting the injustice. She placed her hand on her belly, quietly promising her unborn children that the world they would enter would not be one where she backs down from fighting discrimination, no matter the cost. Carlos's law office conference room had become the investigation headquarters. Whiteboards filled with timeline notes hung on the walls, stacks of birth certificates, and evidence files piled up on the table. Tiana, now 8 months pregnant and monitoring her blood pressure hourly, reviewed testimony from United compliance officers. Listen to this. She called to Carlos, who was preparing for the hearing the next day. When asked about discrimination complaint procedures, Sterling testified, "All complaints are treated equally regardless of passenger background." But Tara's spreadsheet proves complaints were clearly categorized by passenger demographics, perjury. Carlos noted, adding this to their growing list of violations. "The deeper we dig, the worse it gets." 3 critical revelations emerged from their investigation. First, Camilla Monroe. There were records of 7 previous incidents involving minority passengers, all buried under vague misunderstandings about customer service in her file. Secondly, the airline maintained a secret risk assessment system, evaluating complaints based on the potential for bad publicity or legal action from the complainant. The third and most troubling issue was the settlement amounts for identical complaints, which varied significantly depending on the passenger's race, with white passengers receiving much higher compensation. Tara explained that it wasn't just Victoria's case, but the whole email chain. It was systemic. Harold Whitman and Richard Sterling had been handling discrimination complaints for years. The evidence painted a picture of a corporate culture where discrimination wasn't just tolerated, but was implicitly approved by not enforcing policies. In private emails, Harold referred to discrimination complaints as the race card being played and advised managers to minimize exposure by handling these issues quietly. As their case moved forward, the opposition's tactics escalated. Suddenly, Tiana's hospital benefits came under review following an anonymous complaint. Marcus's promising job interview suddenly fell through. The health insurance company notified them of a verification process that temporarily suspended their coverage just as Tiana's due date approached. A verification process that temporarily froze their insurance coverage right as Tiana was about to give birth. They were attacking every part of our lives, Marcus said as they sorted through a flood of letters and notices, making it impossible for us to function normally. Carlos got free legal support from a major civil rights law firm, providing resources to fight United's legal assault. But the personal toll still grew every day. Tiana's blood pressure remained dangerously high. Her obstetrician ordered her to stay on bed rest, allowing only minimal movement and no work. The evidence is so clear. Tiana complained during a strategy meeting she joined by video call from her bed. How can they keep denying everything when we have proof? Ayla Freeman, their civil rights attorney, joined the team, explaining that corporations this big operate in a different reality. They don't need to win. They just have to wear us down emotionally, financially, and physically until we give up. But giving up was never part of Tiana's nature. Despite pregnancy complications, she stayed involved in every strategic decision, reviewed every document, and prepared carefully for her testimony at the upcoming Department of Transportation hearing. Then came the ultrasound photo sent by mail. No return address, no note, just a printed copy of Tiana's latest ultrasound with a big red X crossed over the twins. Marcus immediately contacted the police, but the detective's response left him discouraged. Unfortunately, although concerning, this is not a specific threat. We will increase patrols in your neighborhood, but we can't do much without more concrete evidence. That night, Marcus installed additional security cameras and a more advanced alarm system. He started taking over Tara's night shifts to make sure someone was always awake and alert. The feeling of violation from someone accessing her private medical information made Tiana feel vulnerable in a way she never had before. We need to consider the settlement offer, Marcus gently suggested after a particularly hard night when Tiana's contractions worsened from the stress. The twins are the most important thing. What lesson are we teaching them if we let this injustice continue? He gently suggested this after a tough night when Tiana's contractions became more severe from the stress. The twins are the most important. What lesson will we teach them? If we let this injustice keep going, Tiana pushed back, though her faith wavered as she weighed the risks. If we settle, nothing changes. The next Black pregnant woman on a United flight could face the same discrimination. This case goes way beyond a slap. Through legal discovery, they uncovered systemic discrimination affecting thousands of passengers and employees. The Department of Transportation expanded its investigation to include United's entire customer complaint system. 3 days before the scheduled hearing, Tiana had severe abdominal pain. Marcus rushed her to the hospital, fearing early labor. Doctors diagnosed her with preeclampsia, a dangerous pregnancy complication, characterized by high blood pressure and protein in the urine, which could threaten both Tiana and the twins. She was ordered to have complete bed rest until delivery. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Any stress could trigger seizures or placental abruption. Carlos came by to visit her hospital room. His expression was serious. The hearing is scheduled for Thursday. Given your condition, we could request a postponement. They'll accuse me of delaying. To manipulate the process, Tiana replied, recalling United's earlier accusations. How long would the delay be? At least 30 days, maybe longer. With lawyers filing objections, Tiana thought about Victoria still on paid administrative leave. She thought about Tara, unemployed and at risk of criminal charges for speaking the truth. She thought about other passengers facing discrimination while the system stayed the same. I will be at the hearing, she decided firmly. The doctor can discharge me for those hours. This might be the only chance we have to be heard. Tiana, your health, Marcus began. There's risk no matter what, she concluded. The pressure of allowing this injustice to continue is just as dangerous as testifying. I have to look those executives in the eye when they're finally held accountable. Carlos nodded reluctantly. I'll arrange medical transport and assign a nurse to stay with you. That night, as Tiana lay in her hospital bed monitoring her baby's heartbeat, she wrote a letter to her unborn daughters explaining why their mother chose to fight instead of back down. No matter what happened at Thursday's hearing, she wanted them to understand the world she was trying to create for them, a place where discrimination would have consequences. And speaking truth to power wasn't just an empty phrase, but a necessary act. The letter finished. Tiana finally fell into a restless sleep, dreaming of a courtroom where justice was served and everyone was treated equally regardless of their skin color. The Department of Transportation hearing room grew tense as Tiana was wheeled in by a medical staff member. Camera shutters flashed, relentlessly, capturing the striking image, a black pregnant woman in a wheelchair, a medical monitor discreetly attached under her professional jacket, facing a row of airline executives in expensive suits. This contrast wasn't lost on anyone present. On one side sat Tiana, Marcus, and their legal team. Across from them, United's representatives filled 3 tables: Richard Sterling, Harold Whitman, the corporate counsel, outside lawyers from Hawthorne and Reed, and a PR staff member furiously typing on a tablet. Victoria Keller sat slightly apart, looking both defiant and anxious beside her private attorney. Her once clean flight attendant uniform replaced by a conservative navy dress. She appeared more like a victim than an aggressor. The Transportation Committee members, led by Chairman Douglas Peterson, who had close ties to the airline industry, were present. His previous role on United's Business Advisory Board wasn't enough to force his resignation. Despite Carlos's formal objection, Peterson suddenly declared, "This hearing will proceed. We are investigating complaint number DO 2 regarding alleged discriminatory acts. I remind everyone this is fact-finding, not a trial." His emphasis on the allegations immediately set a new tone. Carlos glanced at Tiana knowingly. They were in for a tough fight. The airline's presentation came first. Offering a carefully filtered story, Victoria described feeling threatened by Tiana's aggressive demands and intimidating stance. "I reacted instinctively to protect myself," she testified with a practiced, shaky voice. "In 15 years on the job, I've never had issues with passengers of any." Carefully screened, Victoria described feeling threatened by Tiana's aggressive demands and threatening posture. "I instinctively reacted to protect myself," she testified in a rehearsed, trembling voice. "In 15 years of work, I've never had an issue with passengers from any background." Tiana's blood pressure monitor beeps softly as the lies accumulate. The nurse beside her adjusts something on the mobile machine and glances at her with a worried expression. Harold Whitman presented statistics showing United's top diversity initiatives and complaint resolution metrics. The data had been carefully selected to conceal discriminatory patterns that Tiana's team had uncovered. When Carlos tried to present Terrera's spreadsheet during the interrogation, Chairman Peterson interrupted. It seemed this information had been obtained without proper authorization. The committee couldn't consider evidence gathered illegally. These documents proved a pattern of systematic discrimination. Carlos argued, "Under the Federal Whistleblower Protection Law, Council, this committee has ruled these documents inadmissible." Peterson cut him off decisively. "Move on, one by one." Their strongest pieces of evidence were dismissed for various procedural reasons. Testimonies from other passengers were limited to written statements. not first-hand accounts. Statistical analysis showing poor treatment of minority complainants was rejected as speculative. During a brief recess, Carlos spoke with Tiana in a nearby room where a nurse was checking her vital signs. "They've completely cheated," he said angrily. Peterson was blocking all crucial evidence. The nurse warned Tiana her blood pressure was dangerously high. "We should consider going back to the hospital." "Not yet," Tiana insisted. "I'm still holding on to my testimony." As the hearing resumed, Tiana was called to testify. A medical attendant wheeled her to the witness stand, where she faced the committee directly. "Dr. Williams." Chairman Peterson began, "Understanding your health condition. We'll keep this brief. Please describe the incident in question." Tiana had prepared carefully for this moment, knowing it might be her only chance to break through the procedural barriers. Instead of focusing just on Victoria's slap, she outlined the entire pattern she had uncovered. "This case isn't just about a single act of discrimination," she stated clearly. "The issue here is a corporate culture that allows and protects discriminatory behavior while silencing victims through threats and legal action." Chairman Peterson repeatedly tried to steer her toward specific details of the incident, but Tiana kept presenting the broader context, as she detailed how United Airlines had interfered with her work and her husband's career. Murmurs spread through the room. "Dr. Williams, please limit your testimony to events on the plane." Peterson emphasized, "These retaliatory actions are directly relevant to understanding how discrimination is maintained." Tiana countered, "When victims face destruction of their livelihoods for speaking out, the discrimination doesn't end with the initial incident." Her deliberate clinical description of the systematic threats she endured resonated, even with skeptical observers. Some committee members grew increasingly uncomfortable as she described the threatening ultrasound images and her current health condition caused by the stress from United Airlines' retaliatory actions. When Tiana finished her testimony, a commotion broke out at the back of the hearing room. Rebecca Carter, Tiana's original contact, who had been noticeably absent throughout the proceedings, entered with two federal agents. Carlos immediately requested another hour recess, and Peterson reluctantly agreed. In the next room, Rebecca explained her astonishing change of heart. "I'm so sorry, Tiana. They harassed me," she admitted, unable to meet Tiana's eyes. "Sterling offered me a senior compliance position at United Airlines with a salary of 3 times what I make with the government. I convinced myself I could do more good from the inside." "What changed?" Marcus asked. Rebecca explained they expected her to falsify reports on discrimination complaints. When she hesitated, they reminded her that her brother's pilot career could be at risk if she didn't cooperate. Then they showed her what they'd done to you, how far they'd go to silence someone. "I couldn't be part of that." Rebecca had brought copies of emails proving the airline deliberately obstructed the Department of Transportation's investigation, including communications with Chairman Peterson to coordinate limiting testimony and evidence. "This changes everything," Carlos said as he reviewed the documents. "This shows illegal interference in a federal investigation." When the hearing reconvened, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The federal agents were still in the room, and their presence visibly unsettled the airline executives. Chairman Peterson's confident demeanor gave way to obvious anxiety as he conferred urgently with the committee. Carlos officially submitted Rebecca's evidence. This time, Peterson did not dare dismiss it, though he limited questioning about its content pending authenticity review. As the hearing continued, Richard Sterling was called to testify. His carefully constructed story fell apart when questioned about specific emails he had ordered subordinates to delete regarding this discrimination complaint. And his reminders to Carter about her real opportunity, the committee saw that the changing circumstances had begun to raise deeper questions. Even members who initially seemed sympathetic to the airline started to distance themselves, focusing instead on transparency and accountability. By the end of the session, Chairman Peterson solemnly declared, "With today's revelations, this committee finds sufficient evidence to refer this matter to the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice for further investigation. This hearing will be adjourned pending that investigation." This wasn't the clear victory Tiana had hoped for. The committee avoided making definitive findings about the discrimination itself. However, the referral to the DOJ opened a new and potentially stronger path toward accountability. As Tiana was escorted out of the hearing room, a sharp pain hit her abdomen. Her nurse immediately checked her blood pressure. Her expression was grave as she read the results. "We need to get her to the hospital right away," she stressed. "Your pressure is dangerously high." The twins, seemingly deciding that enough drama had happened that day, chose that moment to start arriving as contractions intensified. Tiana glanced at Victoria and Richard Sterling gathered with their lawyer, their faces masked with worry. Whatever happened next? Their once impenetrable facade finally cracked. Has this system ever failed? Are you the one who needed justice most? Comment if you've experienced or witnessed unaddressed discrimination. Or leave a second comment if you've seen justice prevail against strong opposition. Like and subscribe to follow more stories about courage standing up to systemic injustice. With Tiana's early labor and the DOJ stepping in, will justice be served, or will United find new ways to dodge responsibility? As Tiana fought not only for justice but for her child's life, the neonatal intensive care unit still echoed with the mechanical rhythms of life support. Tiana's twin daughters, Olivia and Maya, were born 7 weeks early, each just over 4 pounds, their tiny bodies placed in incubators, connected to monitors tracking heart rate, breathing, and oxygen levels. Though stable, they faced common challenges like prematurity, underdeveloped lungs, difficulty regulating body temperature, and feeding complications. Tiana divided her time between recovery and the NICU, pushed in a wheelchair by nurses. Following new mother visitation rules, her preeclampsia had stabilized after birth, but doctors remained concerned about potential postpartum complications. Despite physical exhaustion, Tiana's mind stayed focused on the case. Carlos visited daily, bringing updates and documents to review. The DOJ investigation had officially begun, with investigators interviewing former United employees and passengers who experienced similar discrimination. "The evidence is overwhelming," Carlos reported, whispering in her hospital room. Rebecca's testimony had opened a new door. 5 more employees had come forward to expose the airline's discriminatory practices. Hope flickered until Rebecca failed to appear at a scheduled DOJ interview. When investigators went to her apartment, they found it empty. Her phone disconnected. She had vanished completely. 2 days later, Tiana received a message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry, they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. A new position overseas. All records of the case have been erased. My brother's pilot career is on the line. Please forgive me." Rebecca's betrayal was a harsh blow. As the primary contact and whistleblower, her testimony was crucial in establishing the pattern of corporate interference. Without her, a significant portion of their evidence, it was just a rumor. The hospital's TV kept running in the background, where United's crisis management campaign was nonstop. Victoria appeared on the morning show, tears streaming as she described feeling scapegoated for political correctness. Medical experts questioned whether Tiana's pregnancy complications had caused her to misinterpret routine service interactions through a sensitive emotional lens. The most damaging was a leaked video, carefully edited to only show Tiana making a strong gesture while talking to Victoria, while the actual slap was left out. Conservative commentators analyzed her body language, calling it an objective threat and a legitimate concern for the flight attendants. Tara, the other whistleblower, faced brutal personal attacks. Someone accessed her work records, revealing a disciplinary action from a decade ago over a missed flight. That single incident was turned into a story about persistent unreliability and questionable trustworthiness. When prosecutors declined to press charges on the documents she shared, United filed a civil lawsuit seeking millions in damages for theft of proprietary information. This coordinated attack wasn't limited to the main witnesses. Medical experts confirmed that Tiana's pregnancy complications had triggered anonymous complaints to the licensing board. Carlos's law firm lost, Two major corporate clients without explanation. Even the hospital wasn't spared. Regulators received questions about special treatment for Tiana in the NICU, suggesting her medical connections had secured priority care for her daughters over other premature babies. Marcus observed in a hoarse, exhausted voice, "They're trying to completely isolate us." 7 job interviews were suddenly canceled after reaching the final stages. Their savings quickly drained as hospital bills piled up despite insurance. Tiana held Maya, skin to skin against her chest. The fragile baby's heartbeat was a reminder of everything at risk. "We knew they'd play dirty," she whispered. "But I never imagined they could break the whole system like this." The final betrayal came from an unexpected source. 2 days before Tiana's scheduled discharge, her phone rang. Her friend in the DOT had contacted Stephanie Kamar, who had originally supported their case. "Tiana, I need to warn you." Stephanie's voice was tense. The committee's preliminary findings had just been circulated internally. Peterson had completely rewritten the conclusion. What? Did that mean the official findings stated there wasn't enough evidence of systemic discrimination and treated the case as an isolated misunderstanding between parties? It recommended no further action beyond a general reminder to airlines about customer service standards. Tiana protested this was impossible. The Department of Justice was actively investigating. Evidence was being systematically discredited. Stephanie ended on a sad note. Rebecca's disappearance led them to completely dismiss her testimony. The committee accepted Victoria's account as credible. Because her record was spotless and they believed her perception might have been influenced by pregnancy hormones. Dismissing both her claims of racism and her medical expertise with one stroke left Tiana speechless. Stephanie reluctantly continued, "There's more. Your former colleague, Dr. Patel, made a statement describing you as aggressive and quick to see discrimination during your residency. They used this to create a narrative that misrepresented the situation. Lawrence Patel was my mentor. He wrote me a recommendation letter for my neurosurgery fellowship. United Airlines' parent company holds significant shares in the pharmaceutical company funding his research. A $3 million grant was approved one day after his statement. This corrupt system is vast and highly effective. Every support system, every safeguard, every path to justice has been systematically undermined or taken over." That night, as Tiana sat beside the incubator with her twins, watching their tiny chests rise and fall, she was hit with one last blow. Her hospital privileges were terminated. Her surgical license was suspended pending further review of recent concerns. Without hospital privileges, she couldn't practice neurosurgery, which would end her career unless the suspension was overturned. For the first time since it all began, Tiana broke down in tears, her tears falling onto Olivia's incubator as the consequences closed in around her. She had fought discrimination and lost everything: her career, financial security, her professional reputation, nearly her health, and her children as well. Marcus found her there, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He knelt beside her wheelchair. Taking her hand, "Maybe it's time to consider their settlement offer," he gently suggested. "For the kids, we fought with everything we had, but they rigged the whole system. We can't beat their resources and unlimited influence. The fight cost them almost everything. Maybe it's time to salvage what's left of our lives and focus on our daughter's future." "Let me think about it," Tiana whispered, watching her 2 little girls struggling to breathe. She had to decide what lessons she would ultimately teach them: persistence against the impossible or practical retreat to protect what mattered most. The 3 a.m. feedings became Tiana's quiet refuge. In the dimly lit NICU parent room, she held Maya while Marcus fed Olivia. The babies were now 2 weeks old and slowly getting stronger. These quiet moments together, without legal talks and strategy decisions, offered a brief escape from the heavy burden of their situation. Tiana's phone buzzed with an email notification. Unusual at this hour, the sender's address was a string of random characters. The subject simply read, "Evidence." She almost deleted it as spam until she saw the first line, "Dr. Williams. You don't know me, but I work in United Airlines IT department. What they're doing to you is wrong. The anonymous sender, only identified as Administrator 2577, explained that the airline's internal investigation had been completely sabotaged. Evidence was deleted, witness statements altered, and records manipulated. All of this could be tracked through the company's digital system. They thought they erased everything, but our backup servers still keep full logs. I've attached what they tried to hide. Use it carefully. They'll know someone inside helped you. The attachments included a trove of unaltered documents, original emails between Richard Sterling and Harold Whitman planning a cover-up. Victoria's full personnel file showed multiple past incidents involving minority passengers. Most of the direct, condemnable discriminatory acts were disguised as preferential treatment based on customer group. An email from Richard Sterling to senior management stated, "The profit analysis is clear. Our highest value customers prefer interacting with crew members who reflect their background. While we cannot openly say this, our HR and service protocols must quietly follow these preferences." Another document revealed payments to transportation officials, including Rebecca and Chairman Peterson, disguised as consulting fees through a subsidiary. Rebecca and Chairman Peterson, disguised as consulting fees through a subsidiary. This evidence explained why the hearing was so severely compromised. Tiana immediately forwarded everything to Carlos, her hands shaking from a mix of hope for vindication and fear. This evidence was crucial but might not be accepted if gathered without permission. "We need to act fast," Carlos advised. During an emergency meeting at the hospital cafeteria the next morning, "They'll soon discover the leak and move to stop it. Can we use it legally?" Tiana asked. "Someone accessed the company's system and obtained this information?" Carlos acknowledged, "Not directly in court, but we can use it to guide our investigation, to know where to look and what to formally request through legal channels, and we can share it with journalists under whistleblower protections." Tiana's legal team worked through the night to prepare a comprehensive strategy. By morning, they had drafted new motions for the Department of Justice investigation. They also prepared specific document requests that would now yield results because they knew exactly what to ask for. They were ready to file everything when Tiana received an urgent call from Tara. She warned they knew about the leak. There was panic at headquarters. They were preparing to. An emergency injunction was issued on charges of corporate espionage and privacy invasion. Within hours, United Airlines' lawyers filed a motion to block the release of any documents obtained illegally. Regardless of the content, the judge issued a temporary order prohibiting Tiana, her lawyer, or anyone acting on her behalf from distributing, discussing, or referencing any internal United Airlines documents in any proceedings without approval. They banned Tiana, her lawyer, or anyone representing her from distributing, discussing, or referencing any internal United Airlines documents in any legal procedure without authorization. This was an official discovery ban. They were using the court to hide evidence of their own wrongdoing. Carlos was furious after reviewing the order. Procedurally, it was smart, by focusing on how the documents were obtained rather than what they contained. They effectively censored the truth. The injunction created an impossible catch-22. Breaking it could lead to Tiana being charged with contempt of court and possibly criminal penalties. Following it meant watching crucial evidence disappear as United Airlines' IT department wiped the backup servers clean and erased all traces. Tiana faced the classic whistleblower's dilemma. Evidence of wrongdoing couldn't be revealed without breaking rules designed by the system to protect the wrongdoers themselves. That afternoon, as Tiana pushed the wheelchair into the neonatal intensive care unit for the twin scheduled feeding, her phone buzzed with increasingly urgent messages from Carlos. United Airlines' lawyers had expanded their aggressive lawsuits in 3 different jurisdictions, overwhelming her legal team's capacity to respond. Each filing needed immediate attention to avoid a summary judgment in favor of United Airlines. The stress sent Tiana's blood pressure soaring. As the nurses hurried to stabilize her, she realized the airline's strategy hadn't changed. They were applying maximum pressure until something broke. Their resource advantage meant they could sustain this legal assault indefinitely while her team exhausted themselves just trying to keep up. That evening, in her hospital room, as doctors adjusted her medication, Tiana made a decision based on a mother's instinct rather than legal strategy. Her daughters needed her healthy and present, more than they needed the satisfaction of a victory that might never come. "I think we need to settle," she whispered to Marcus. The girls needed a mother, not constantly fighting a system designed to break her. Marcus sat down beside her and took her hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm behind you. But before you make your final decision, there's someone who wants to talk with you." He opened the door to find Dr. Eleanor Mitchell, chief of neurosurgery at Massachusetts General Hospital and chair of the hospital's board of trustees. This brilliant surgeon was Tiana's mentor and role model in medical school. "Your husband reached out to me," Dr. Mitchell explained, pulling a chair up beside Tiana's bed. "He thought you might benefit from the perspective of someone who's fought similar battles." Over the next hour, the senior surgeon shared her own experiences facing discrimination throughout her 40-year career. She reviewed the details of Tiana's case and the limits of the non-disclosure order. Dr. Mitchell carefully explained that the documents you legally can't distribute contain information that could involve many parties outside the courtroom. For example, hospital boards often include people with significant influence across various industries. Tiana reminded her that the non-disclosure order prevents sharing anything with the general public or in legal proceedings. Dr. Mitchell agreed, "But I serve on 3 hospital boards, including this one. The confidentiality between doctor and patient creates a protected channel of communication. If you happen to discuss some concerns about systemic discrimination affecting patient care during medical consultations, the implication is clear. There are solutions beyond the usual legal channels," Dr. Mitchell added. "I also serve on the board of Eastland Financial Group, one of United Airlines' largest institutional shareholders. Board members acting as trustees often have to have difficult conversations about company behavior. For the first time in weeks, Tiana felt a glimmer of hope. The system United had thoroughly undermined had holes they hadn't anticipated. They didn't control the healthcare networks and connections. "I need time to think," Tiana said, her mind racing with new possibilities. "Of course," Dr. Mitchell replied, standing to leave. "Your top priority should be your health and your beautiful daughters. But remember, Tiana, sometimes the most effective challenges to power come from within the power structure itself." After Dr. Mitchell left, Marcus revealed another crucial detail. Dr. Mitchell's son-in-law, Jeffrey Barnes, was the new head of the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. She said he was very interested in cases involving corporate accountability. That night, as Tiana carefully reviewed the evidence they couldn't legally distribute, she began crafting a strategy that could achieve what traditional legal methods could not. The system might be broken, but it wasn't a monolith, and United had underestimated the power of the healthcare network in shareholder influence. For the first time since entering the hospital, Tiana slept without nightmares of failure. The private birthing center next to Massachusetts General Hospital had secured both medical safety for the premature twins and absolute privacy for the honored guests visiting over the next 3 days. To outside observers, it looked like a courteous visit to a respected colleague caring for a newborn. In reality, Tiana was orchestrating the most important strategic turning point in the whole matter. Dr. Eleanor Mitchell introduced key hospital board members to influential figures with connections across healthcare, finance, law, and government. Each visitor received private medical consultations behind closed doors, where Tiana carefully complied with the non-disclosure order, yet defied its spirit. She shared concerns about systemic issues affecting patient care during transfers. Her medical evidence showed her lawsuit had been dismissed when she detailed how stress-induced preeclampsia had threatened her twins' lives. These powerful individuals, many of whom were parents themselves, reacted with genuine outrage. Bernard Watkins, chairman of Eastland Financial Group, arrived late Tuesday after most visitors had left. As one of United's largest institutional shareholders, controlling nearly 8% of the airline's stock, their concern for Tiana's patient care issue was particularly significant. After the hour-long discussion, Dr. Williams commented, "This is troubling information, especially from a risk management perspective. These practices risk significant legal liability and reputational damage. As a trustee accountable to investors, I have an obligation to address governance failures at this level." His carefully chosen words acknowledged the limits of the non-disclosure order while clearly signaling his intent to act on what he'd learned. He continued, I understand there are complex legal issues currently preventing broader discussion. However, our quarterly shareholder meeting is tomorrow. Board governance issues are always relevant topics for such forums. Watkins left with a gentle pat on Maya's head and a promise focus on these children. Dr. Williams. Some of the responsibility now lies with people in different positions on this issue. The next morning, United Airlines' leadership gathered at company headquarters to prepare for the quarterly shareholder meeting. Richard Sterling reviewed his presentation, highlighting record profits and expanded routes. Confident in his position despite Dr. Williams' situation, the legal department had effectively contained the crisis through aggressive litigation and strategic pressure. The Compliance Transportation Committee would soon release its final report, completely dismissing the discrimination allegations. While Sterling spoke to his executive team, his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Bernard Watkins had requested a private meeting just before the shareholder session. Perhaps he wanted reassurance about Sterling's dividend forecast. Nearly 8% of the airline's shares. So their concerns about Tiana's patient care mean a lot. Dr. Williams commented after the hour-long discussion that this is troubling information, especially from a risk management perspective. These actions pose a risk of significant legal liability and damaged reputation. As a trustee responsible to investors, I have an obligation to address these governance failures at this level. His carefully chosen words acknowledge the limitations of the gag order while clearly communicating the intent to act on what he had learned. He continued, I understand that there are currently some complex legal issues preventing broader discussions. However, our quarterly shareholder meeting is tomorrow. Board governance issues are always appropriate topics for such forums. Watkins left with a light pat on Maya's head and a promise. Focus on these children. Dr. Williams. Some responsibilities now rest with those in different positions on this matter. The next morning, the leadership team of United Airlines gathered at the company headquarters to prepare for the quarterly shareholder meeting. Richard Sterling reviewed his presentation, emphasizing record profits and expanded routes. Confident in his position, despite Dr. Williams' current situation, the legal department had effectively contained the crisis through aggressive litigation and strategic pressure. The Compliance Transportation Committee would soon release a final report, completely dismissing the allegations of discrimination. As Sterling was speaking to his executive team, his assistant interrupted with an emergency message. Bernard Watkins requested to hold a private meeting just before the shareholder session. Perhaps he wanted reassurance about Sterling's dividend forecast. He confidently told Harold Whitman, institutional investors always focus on quarterly profits. Watkins had arrived with the same group, legal advisors and Eastland's risk management experts. An unusual group for a discussion before the regular meeting. His usual friendly demeanor had been replaced with cold professionalism. Mr. Sterling, I'll be straightforward. Eastland has received troubling information about governance failures, and the potential legal violations pose significant risk to our investment before today's meeting. I ask for permission to. Sterling remained calm. Bernard, I assure you our compliance is exemplary. If this is about Williams' complaint, that matter is being handled appropriately. Is that resolution process why 3 separate federal agencies opened investigations into your company this week? Watkins asked, sliding a document across the table. This is a confidential notice that the Securities and Exchange Commission has launched an inquiry into whether United's public statements about its anti-discrimination policies constitute securities fraud. Amid evidence of systematic opposing actions, Sterling paled. The SEC investigation is not public, and securities fraud can carry criminal penalties. There must be some misunderstanding. Watkins pressed on relentlessly. Our risk assessment team has estimated potential legal liabilities from class action discrimination lawsuits at around $2 billion. Excluding punitive damages or brand devaluation, this is a significant undisclosed risk to shareholders. The systematic dismantling of Sterling's position lasted 20 minutes as Watkins methodically detailed governance failures, legal issues, and ethical breaches, none directly referencing the silenced evidence. His closing statement left no room for negotiation. Eastland would propose a resolution at today's meeting calling for the immediate suspension of all involved executives pending an independent investigation. We have the backing of 3 other institutional investors representing a total of 34% voting power. The carefully constructed defense Sterling had built collapsed. Pressure tactics that worked on Tiana, an individual with limited resources, proved ineffective against institutional shareholders with billions at stake. While Sterling struggled to stop the impending coup in the boardroom, Tiana got updates from Marcus, who was tracking financial news from the maternity ward. United stock had dropped 11% amid governance concerns as institutional investors prepared for the shareholder meeting. 2 hours later, Bernard Watkins personally called, "The carefully built protective system by Sterling has collapsed. Pressure tactics were effective with Tiana, an individual with limited resources, but they proved ineffective with institutional shareholders whose billions of dollars are at stake." While Sterling tried to prevent the impending coup in the meeting room, Tiana received updates from Marcus, who was tracking financial news from the birth center. United stock dropped 11% due to rumors about governance concerns as institutional investors prepared for the shareholders' meeting. 2 hours later, Bernard Watkins personally called. The board had voted to suspend the entire executive leadership team until an independent investigation was completed. Camilla Monroe's uncle was removed from his executive management position. The new interim CEO wanted to speak with you without the presence of a lawyer. The interim CEO, Janet Foster, who was previously the senior vice president in charge of international operations of United and had no connections to Sterling's inner circle, arrived at the birth center that evening. Her straightforward approach, contrasted with the company's previous positioning, "Dr. Williams, what happened to you is unforgivable," she immediately acknowledged. The airline's response was a stark contrast to the company's previous stance. "Dr. Williams, what happened to you is unforgivable," she admitted immediately. The airline's response was also unacceptable. "My first official act as interim CEO was to issue a public apology to you and your family. The second thing I want to announce is that we have terminated Camilla Monroe's employment contract and accepted Harold Whitman's resignation." Janet presented a comprehensive settlement proposal that not only included financial compensation but also structural changes within the airline, mandatory anti-discrimination training, and revisions to the complaint handling process. "We will transparently report discrimination allegations and have third-party oversight of the resolution process." Janet explained that they called this the Williams Protocol. With Dr. Williams's permission, they wanted to roll out these changes across their entire operation and share the framework with other airlines as an industry best practice. The proposal included lifting gag orders, dropping all lawsuits against Tiana and Tara, and providing funding to establish a support fund for victims of discrimination in transportation. "Why such a complete turnaround?" Tiana asked, with suspicion after months of fierce opposition. "Honestly, because the shareholders value profits above all else." Janet answered frankly. What Sterling never understood was that systemic discrimination is bad business. It alienates passengers, creates legal risks, and damages brand reputation. It's financially unsustainable. The board didn't suddenly embrace moral clarity. They realized discrimination was a luxury they simply couldn't afford. After Janet left, Carlos came to review the settlement terms. "This is everything we fought for and more," he confirmed after reading the documents. "The structural changes will benefit thousands of passengers in the future, and the Williams Protocol will be his legacy and anti-discrimination policy." As Tiana held Olivia close, feeling her daughter's heartbeat growing stronger, she thought about how their fight had transformed. What began as resistance to discrimination had grown into a systemic reform supported by the very capitalist system that initially protected discriminatory practices. "Add one more clause," Tiana instructed. Carlos, Tara was reinstated with full seniority and compensated for all lost wages. The airline would cover her legal fees in their harassment case. That night, seeing her twin baby sleeping soundly by her bedside for the first time, Tiana reflected on this unexpected shift in power. The system doesn't just become fair on its own. The shareholders acted out of self-interest rather than moral conviction. But sometimes justice emerges from unexpected factors when traditional systems fail. For her daughters, that was perhaps the most important lesson. Maybe fighting injustice, not only through traditional channels, but also by understanding and leveraging the underlying systems that govern power. 6 months later, Tiana sat comfortably in the green room of the main studio at the National Public Broadcasting Network. Makeup artists were putting the finishing touches on her look as the producer confirmed the airtime for her segment on the most watched evening news program. The twin babies, now 7 months old, healthy with their dad's dimples and their mom's determined face, played happily with toys in a portable crib nearby. 5 minutes. Dr. Williams, an assistant, announced Senator Harrington had just finished his presentation. Tiana nodded, reviewing the key points she wanted to make one last time. Today's interview marked the peak of a transformation. What started with an act of discrimination on a plane had sparked widespread change. American businesses, the transportation industry, and the federal regulatory framework were all impacted. The months following United's leadership reform brought both justice and unexpected opportunities. Victoria, Harold, Preet, and Richard faced federal charges for obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and conspiracy, the criminal consequences of their coordinated campaign to silence Tiana and hide evidence. United Airlines had implemented the Williams Protocol across all operations, creating what industry analysts now call the gold standard for anti-discrimination policies. 6 other major airlines adopted similar frameworks, partly out of ethical mandates but mostly due to competitive pressure as passengers increasingly considered corporate ethics when making purchasing decisions. Most importantly, Tiana testified before a congressional committee investigating corporate discrimination. Her methodical and calm presentation on how United used its resources against a victim made waves across political lines. The legislation that followed, the Fairness and Accountability in Transportation Act, strengthened protections for discrimination victims and whistleblowers, and imposed strict penalties on corporate retaliation. We're ready. Dr. Williams, the assistant announced, as the cameras prepared to roll. Tiana reflected on her unexpected journey. From neurosurgeon to civil rights advocate, her medical career continued. Massachusetts General Hospital offered her a prestigious position. After her recovery, her work was no longer limited to the operating room. The Williams Fund, established with her settlement money, provided legal representation for discrimination victims facing corporate pushback. Tara, reinstated at United as the diversity training coordinator, made important contributions. She developed programs to identify and address systemic biases before they turned into incidents of discrimination. 3, 2, 1. The director began the countdown. As the segment started, tonight we have Dr. Tiana Williams with us, who has experienced discrimination firsthand. Last year's United Airlines flight led to significant changes in how corporations handle racial discrimination. The host began, Dr. Williams, your case has been called a turning point in corporate accountability. Did you ever imagine that your simple request for an accommodation would lead to testifying before Congress? Tiana smiled. Never. I was just a pregnant passenger asking for a pillow. But when that ordinary request exposed discrimination, I couldn't stay silent. Even when pushing back threatened everything my family and I had worked so hard to build. The interview explored the broader implications of her case. Companies often use financial and legal power to wear down individuals who challenge discriminatory behavior. How systems designed to ensure accountability can be undermined by influence, and how unexpected allies sometimes emerge from within. Power structures themselves. The host noted that the Williams Protocol is now being applied across many industries. She was asked what she sees as its most important element. Independent oversight. Tiana answered without hesitation. Internal investigations will always protect the interests of the organization. External accountability ensures complaints are fairly evaluated, regardless of the complainant's resources or connections. As the program ended, the host asked the final question. For viewers facing discrimination without your level of education and to medical connections, what message do you have? Tiana reflected on her difficult journey, the desperate moments when victory seemed impossible. The personal cost her family endured, and the unexpected alliances that ultimately turned things around. She advised to start by documenting everything. Realistically, record incidents when possible, keep a detailed timeline, and save all communications. Secondly, recognize that standing up to discrimination often triggers increasing resistance. Be prepared emotionally and strategically for this reality. She paused, thinking of viewers facing similar battles without her support. Most importantly, remember that justice rarely comes from a single individual's actions. Seek allies, connect with advocacy groups, and understand that changing systems requires collective effort. My case succeeded not because I fought alone, but because enough people with various forms of power finally recognized that discrimination harms everyone, even those who initially thought they benefited from unjust systems. The interview was over. Tiana returned to the green room, where Marcus was waiting with the twins. Eliza Carter, a 6-year-old daughter of a production assistant, joined them and was excited to see the children. Are you the lady on the plane? Eliza shyly asked as Tiana walked in. I was, kneeling down to the child's level. Tiana confirmed it. Eliza spoke with the straightforwardness only a child has. My mom said you made it so people on the plane would treat each other kindly, even if they look different. My train. I hope so. Tiana smiled. That's exactly the goal we all work toward. I want to be a doctor or an airplane mechanic like you. When I grow up, Eliza confidently declared. When I grow up, Eliza said confidently. Tiana glanced at Marcus, and they both understood the deeper meaning behind the child's ambition. Their fight was about more than just one incident or even the airline's systemic practices. It stood for the ongoing work to create a world where kids like Eliza naturally believe they can aspire to be leaders in healthcare and social justice, no matter their background. Kids like Eliza naturally believing they can aspire to be leaders in healthcare and social justice, no matter their background. That evening, on the flight home, Tiana had a moment that felt familiar as she settled into first class with the twins. A young black flight attendant approached with a polite and professional manner. Dr. Williams. Welcome aboard. Can I get you anything before takeoff? Maybe an extra pillow to make the baby more comfortable. A simple, professional, courteous offer made without hesitation, representing everything they had fought for. Not special treatment, not extra favors, just equal service given with equal respect. Yeah, thank you. And Tiana replied, accepting the pillow with a smile that acknowledged the journey behind those simple words. That's perfect. Tiana Williams' journey teaches us deep lessons about confronting discrimination in today's world. First, individual acts of racism are often symptoms of deeper systemic problems that organizations actively try to hide. When Tiana was slapped, she was not only facing the prejudice of one flight attendant, but an entire corporate system designed to protect discriminatory behavior. Second, fighting discrimination requires understanding power dynamics. Usual routes to justice like complaints, hearings, and investigations can be compromised when organizations prioritize self-protection over accountability. Real change often means identifying leverage points within these systems and finding allies with different kinds of power. Third, the cost of standing against injustice is rarely distributed fairly. Tiana risked her career, health, finances, and family happiness facing forces with far greater resources. This reality explains why many victims of discrimination choose silence, a practical decision, not a moral failure. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, lasting change comes from making discrimination costly financially and reputationally for organizations. When shareholders see discrimination as a business liability rather than an abstract ethical issue, they take decisive action when moral appeals fail. This shows how justice sometimes comes from unexpected places when we understand the system that manages power. The Williams Protocol reminds us that individual courage, while essential, must be combined with strategic thinking and collective action to transform the systems that uphold inequality. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that went unchallenged? Have you ever stood up against injustice and faced unexpected consequences? Share your story in the comments below. If this story of courage against systemic racism resonates with you, please like and subscribe to support more stories exposing discrimination and honoring those brave enough to fight it. Remember, every time we speak out, we help create the world our children deserve to inherit. Is for those brave enough to fight against it. Remember, every time we speak up, we contribute to creating the world that our descendants deserve to inherit. Thank you for listening to Tiana's journey. I hope this inspires all of us to realize that justice requires not only individual courage, but also collective strategic action.